Today we're going to go over hip external rotation with PAILs RAILs. So the goal of the stretch is to improve hip external rotation, and that is the hip external rotators as well as the posterior capsule of the hip. So I have Ryan here who is going to demonstrate to you guys how to get into the stretch and how to perform the stretch correctly. So Ryan's going to go ahead and get into the 90-90 position. So we want his hip and knee in the front and back leg to be at 90 degrees of flexion. So right here you can see the angle. We want our foot dorsiflexed, both the back leg as well. Now, the important thing when we find a stretch first is to make sure that we are feeling it in the correct location. Everybody has different anatomies, and so some people may have to get a slight different position to feel a stretch in the correct location. The correct location for hip external rotation is deep in the butt muscle, kind of in the back part of your hip. So for Ryan, and usually for most people to cue this in the 90-90 position, we're first going to make sure that he is sitting upright and not kind of shifting back into a posterior pelvic tilt. So this is what that typically looks like. We're looking to avoid that. So make sure you're sitting upright on your sit bones. To do that, you're going to think about lifting your belly button up and forward and sticking your butt straight out behind you. Ryan's going to continue doing that until he feels a really good deep stretch as much as he can. When he feels that, he's going to stop when he's at his max. A lot of people tend to overdo this stretch and go all the way down because they can and their chest comes down. This is adding a low back stretch, and we are not stretching the low back. That's not the goal. So it's unnecessary and sometimes problematic. Let's avoid that and make sure this is just hip external rotation that we are stretching. So Ryan's at his max position right now. Once you find that good stretch, you are going to hold that for 1.5 to 2 minutes. We usually just shoot for 2 minutes to optimize your results. So as he's sitting here, he's doing some nice deep breaths in through his belly. He's exhaling, he's relaxing, he's not fighting the stretch. We are getting some nice calm breathing in this position. Once the 2 minutes is up, Ryan is going to start the PAILs contraction. PAILs contractions are going to be contracting the stuff that you are stretching. Stuff because it's more than just muscles. So to do that, Ryan's first going to inhale in through his nose into his abdomen. He's going to create contractions there, trap the air, and he's going to start ramping up his internal rotation contraction. What that looks like is inhale in through your nose, kind of trap air here. Start to lightly from here down push into the ground. So he's rotating into that ground. It's an isometric contraction. Nothing is happening. He's just isometrically contracting the muscles. He is starting at 0%. He is going a little bit harder. Go a little bit harder than that. Let's go to 75%, 80, 90. Give me everything you have and hold. Sustain that contraction at 100% for 30 seconds. Once the 30 seconds has gone by, so we are going to assume that has right now, he is going to ramp down. So slowly relax those muscles back to 0%. Now he's back in the stretch. Again, no movement has happened. We are now going to add the rails contraction. That is the opposite side of what you are contracting. Is going to pull you deeper into the stretch or just have you find the contraction of those muscles on the opposite side of the hip. For Ryan, that's going to be up here where his adductors are in the front of the hip muscles here. So he is going to start ramping up those muscles by imagining from here down, he is trying to lift that towards the ceiling, and at the same time he is actually going and pulling himself deeper into that position, again without the back leaning forward. We are avoiding that, staying in that contracted position with the chest up. So he's going to start at 10, 25% muscle contraction, then he's going to gradually ramp up to 50, up to 75, up to 100% of that contraction, driving that leg up, pulling his belly button forward and down towards his leg. We are pulling ourselves into a deeper stretch. Likely nothing's going to happen, but it's an isometric contraction. He is holding this contraction for 30 seconds, and then when that 30 seconds is up, which we're going to imagine is happening, he is going to relax and come out of that stretch. The only other thing you want to make sure you're doing is during the rails contraction, we don't want the foot trying to pretend to be your hip. So minimize the foot contraction, really isolate all of the stuff in the front of the hip only so that you really are getting the muscle contraction here. That connection's really important. You can always add a second round of these PAILs RAILs contractions, but at least one is going to be beneficial. And that, my friends, is a hip external rotation stretch with PAILs and RAILs.